Good morning, my fellow yogic travelers. I'm mighty glad to be alive today, and I hope that you are too. Continuing on my psychedelic gurus, the early experiences of people that helped me to expand my view, I want to honor Aldous Huxley, an English writer who wrote a fantastic compilation of the mystics of all time called The Perennial Philosophy. And in one of his books called Island, he has the mynah birds flying around going, attention, 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 all the time to have people wake up. And as you know, or may not know, Aldous Huxley was a big advocate of LSD. And I believe he also took LSD just right before he passed away. So he went out tripping. So the whole thing about paying attention and psychedelics has to do with the realization that most people have voluntary ignorance. They choose to remain unaware. And so, in a discipline like yoga, for instance, where you're the agent, you're responsible for doing something. So it has to do with that statement where there's a will, there is a way, provided the will is sufficiently intense and sustained. Then you can make things happen. So, one of the things that I love about Huxley is his reminder that you can't arrive at the perfection of spirit without love, because God is love, and God is loved as much as God is known. And so the whole idea of the path of knowledge, seeking a revelation, trying to find out what this is, because the more you know of it, the more you're going to love it. And that leads you to both humility, patience, and endurance. In your daily life especially, the difficulty and the dignity of any task has nothing to do with its technical worth, but has to do with the amount of love that goes into it, because that's its essential worth. And one of the things that's recommended is to use prayer. How do you get down on the knees of your heart and have this dialogue with the great other? And 4 types of prayer remind you of the way that you can access this power inside yourself and how it connects you to other people. One type of prayer is called petition. And that's the idea where you're supposed to go to the deity and ask stuff for yourself. I know it seems selfish, but no, the deity wants you to directly have a relationship. And so it's not wrong to ask for whatever it is, however menial it is. It doesn't matter. Help me pass the test. Help me arrive safely. Help me speak correctly. It's all about you and your relationship to the deity, and that's okay. But it has to also be added to other types of prayer and reaching out that aren't so self-centered. Not that there's anything wrong with that at that first level. And that second level is called intercession. Your relationship is also supposed to reflect your concern for other people, where you're the person who's like the go-between, you're the mediator, you're there to be the champion for them. Please, dear God or Goddess or whoever you're praying to, let Uncle John have a successful operation, get him off the dialysis machine. If the person is arrested, they hope that they go through the system, or if they have to spend any time in jail, you minimize what the horror is of being incarcerated. But whatever it is you're thinking about another person and you want the best for them, that's intercession. You're asking the powers that'll be to step in and guide them in the same way that you want good things for yourself. Then the third one is called adoration. In the idea of the divine unity, any facet that you pick in some way is equal to every other facet, because they're not really separate from one another. So pick anything that you want to rev your affections behind. The divine inscrutability, the divine infiniteness, right? The divine beauty. Sometimes it's hard to see what the divine justice is or how providence works in people's lives, but if you understand karma, it all works out in a way where everybody gets their just desserts. And so you pick something and you totally go into that and you immerse yourself in that to see the wonder, the awesomeness, the miraculousness of whichever aspect of the divine you choose to look at. And then the last one is contemplation. How do you empty yourself out? like both Meister Eckhart and the Tao says, you don't get to the soul by a process of addition, but by subtraction, continuing letting go until you've done what they call self-naughting, self-annihilation. You empty yourself so much, the less of you, the more of it. And all of a sudden, the deepest prayer is a naked intent stretching out, totally passive, open to receive, not telling deity, as in the previous, or asking deity what you want, or telling deity what they should do, right? How they should intervene, what form would you like to see it in. It's completely opening yourself up to allow yourself to be filled. So that's another aspect of what Huxley has to share with us. The basic essence of the perennial philosophy is really simple. First of all, you posit that there is a ground of being, that there's a, you could call it divine reality, but it doesn't matter because all words fall short. Anything that you cling to is a kind of idol worship. You let it go, but you recognize it can't be soiled by the tongue. It's beyond all name and form. Any God defined as a God confined. We're pointing to that thing that's beyond concepts, beyond our ability to say what it is. That's why it's so mysterious. Sometimes they say the reason why the Tao is great is because it can't be defined. If it could be defined, it wouldn't be great. So I call that the great other. Or it's the all. It's another way we talk about it. It includes everything you can think about and also goes beyond that too. Because if it didn't go beyond that, it wouldn't be the all. Even though that part of it is beyond our ability to understand what it really is in its furthest reaches. Or like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I have shown you only a portion of my infinite greatness. And that's all we can see with our mind. So we got to get out of our mind. And of course, Huxley understood that in the past, many systems, there's an enormous amount of information about this, about the sacred plants and medicine food that people have always used. There's a certain idea of danger connected to it, a certain kind of idea of poison connected to the system. Sometimes people vomit a lot when they take peyote or stuff like that. But now we're coming up with new drugs, new physiologies, new chemistries, like ketamines, and new chemicals that don't provide the same kind of negative experience in the body and yet give you that beautiful astral experience of what can happen when the veil is lifted. So the first part of the perennial philosophy is the emphatic statement that there's a ground of being, that there's an underlying reality, that on the surface we may not see it's there, because when you're on the surface you only see the shallows. But if you go out into the middle of the ocean, you don't see the bottom. It's hidden, but it's there. So in the same way, this is the background out of which everything comes. It's the nothing out of which the something comes. And so the next thing is to realize that not only does this ground of being exist, but in a certain way it has a certain kind of similarity to the essence of every human being and everything in created life as well, right? That there's something about that ground of being that's exactly the same, not just akin to, but identical with what is the depth in a human being. It's only difference in quantity, not quality. Once you understand there's a ground of being, and once you understand that there's something inside you that's identical with it, then the last thing is to realize that the purpose of life is to have a conscious realization of it, to be aware of it while you're alive and embodied. Not just to say it's there, but not have a direct experience of it. And of course, from my point of view, yoga is one of the best, if not the best, system to integrate all these different facets of life and bring you to the point of revelation, where you can find out yourself what these people throughout history, the mystics, it's almost a unanimous consideration that if you study, you'll see it's unmistakable in so many traditions that they're saying the same thing with different metaphors, but the experience that they're talking about is one that everyone who's had it agrees this is what it is. And those who haven't had it can only conjecture as to what it is. But then there's a difference between those who know as a result of revelation what has been revealed to them, as opposed to those who are still seeking, questing for some truth that they think is missing, but they're not there yet. They're not there yet. But why are they questing? Because there's a hint that there's something to be found, and if you can find it, it's going to revolutionize your whole life. So seek the perennial philosophy in your own way, friends.